Is there anything that you've had experience here in the United States as well as in Japan? Is there anything you can point to in what you've been doing in Japan that you think we need to think about here? There are cultural differences, there are obviously regulatory differences, there are different business practices. I think there must also be some things that we can take and translate back into our thinking here. So if you have any ideas.
Do you mind if I go first? Yeah. One thing I would say would be standards, dimensional standards. One reason why things work as well as they do, I think, in Japan, in architecture and building and interior, is they have a long tradition of standard dimensions. For instance, a typical closet is, about 6 feet wide and 3 feet deep, and it's divided top and bottom. And there are thousands and thousands of solutions for storage units, for instance, to subdivide that space. And it's possible because the dimensions are standard. The structural system is based on a module. It's a metric system based on a module. It's very, very easy for manufacturers to bring down the cost of products and designs and appliances and everything to make it easier to use limited space because of that. That's one issue. I think it would be very difficult to implement something in the United States. I also have heard people working in China having a very difficult time with trying to convince people there that that's a very, very good idea. In my own experience and my research, and perhaps Mr. Tsumi would agree, I always question of these solutions that seem to be fantastic and wonderful, well, are they really Japan-specific? How much of those living space characteristics could translate? My gut reaction is certainly in terms of apartments in high-density urban areas, I think people would be thrilled to have spaces that have some of these characteristics. They're willing to have a modern lifestyle. If the light was better, if things were convertible and movable and flexible, I think people would be thrilled. In terms of family space, issues of privacy, each kid wanting their own room with a door, that's a bigger issue. I don't know that would translate the Japanese approach, which is for less privacy. I don't know that would translate. What do you think?
Almost okay.
Yeah? Hmm?
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Are there any restrictions around unrelated adults sharing space that have to go into, filing, thinking about the design of buildings, or is that just not anywhere in the code?
Is there?
It isn't.
There isn't.
It isn't.
Yes, I've never heard of that. I imagine there is public housing in Japan as well. I imagine when people are applying for public housing, and it's always in short supply, that those things are looked at. But for renters, rarely. I think that it's a similar situation, certainly in Tokyo to Manhattan. The demographics are very, very similar, although probably within the city limits there's a larger percentage of families, nuclear families still living there, but a lot of people living alone. And in a very, very lively rental market for singles, for one-room apartments, for one-room condominiums, etc. It's a very similar demographic. We also have a lot of people staying at home with their parents until their 30s. It's very, very similar to what we see here. A lot of childless couples. But I think there are roommates. I've lived certainly in places and had roommates, but I think it's less common for other social reasons. Living with people that you don't really know very well, that you're not really connected with to some degree, I think is a bit difficult for a lot of Japanese. So I don't think roommates is quite as common as it is here.
What about one of the current catchwords, if you will, or discussions in housing relates to LEED certification in the United States, which is not a regulation. It's more a set of possible ways to create a more environmentally sustainable building. Some might argue against that, but the thinking is, and it's been catching on in the marketplace here, where is the kind of Japanese market thinking about environmental sustainability, and then how is the development community and the building community and the architectural community responding to that?
What do you think?
Structure is
You?
Yeah, in terms of the urban planning, well, Japan is now the transition, it's changing a lot, and will be find particular suitable way to do some community town, something in the systems as well. It's a totally time to changing, and many contradiction between the regulation and reality, and actual practical work and system as well. So can you follow something?
Yeah. Do many of your clients ask you a lot about environmental or green building or these issues?
They do, but it's a part of their interest is not wide view, I say. It's very narrow. Sometimes well, I'm interested in the green or something like that. They just focus that way. But it's missing the balance between something.
Yeah.
So we need to lead the clients.
Yeah, it hasn't reached the kind of critical density here. That said, in terms of energy use, I'd say the Japanese are probably much better, much more efficient. Appliances are much more efficient. Things like insulation are kind of recent ideas, but it wasn't really necessary for a long time because they tend not to heat the entire house or heat the entire room. A lot of localized heating just to heat the area near where a person's sitting. For the Japanese homeowner or a renter, it's almost always an issue of cost. You know, how can I use less energy? How can I bring my costs down? There is environmental awareness, but it's more what's in it for me. There are a lot of rooftop solar hot water heaters. I noticed that when I first moved to Japan in the early 80s. They're very, very common. I don't know if it's half the houses or more have rooftop solar hot water heaters, which are sold and provided by the utilities, to help people lower their costs. Certainly there's it's recognized as a return on investment in that. And again, the manufacturers tend to take the lead in really strong, well thought out energy efficient solutions. They market it for cost savings, and also green marketing is very big, but there's a manufacturer called Misawa who marketed a zero energy house, totally powered by solar panels, back in the mid 1980s. They didn't sell a lot of them, but they manufactured them. I mean, I'd say not a lot, but it's in the thousands. It's not in the tens of thousands, but they certainly were really looking in that direction, trying to lead the market.
You mentioned, Asby, that there's more building for seniors going on now. As there are different trends emerging demographically, is the housing looking different, or is it, built different, or is it just, marketed toward different people?
There isn't an elderly style yet, if that's the question is. There's not really. There is more elderly housing, but still much more than the United States. The parents live with children. I mean, the elderly want to live at home, and the children believe that's their responsibility to take care of them. So you don't have a lot of, I wish I had numbers to tell you, but my impression is there are certainly an equal number, if not more, elderly people who are living with one of their adult children as there are elderly living on their own or elderly couples living alone. And I think about my own neighborhood. It has been the elderly living with the children or living next door, something like that, staying in close proximity. It will change. People are more mobile, people are living in different cities, younger people are less willing to take on the responsibility, but I haven't seen any great design directions coming out of that. On the other hand, just like the spatial, cabinetry standards, there are a lot of projects, retrofits, a lot of things on the market to make homes more accessible. That's certainly on people's minds.
And we have time for one more question, if you have a final question.
Can we just speak about construction quality for a moment? The beauty that we saw there is reflective both of the architecture and the execution. And the execution of a single-family house is very different even here, than the execution of a large-scale project. If we were looking at examples of apartment buildings or multifamily housing, is the kind of beautiful execution that we just saw there and the kind of cabinetry and built-ins that we just saw there the norm? Is this what we would expect? The spatial qualities that we saw there are...
Is yours standard quality?
Yeah, it's standard quality.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
still that the Japanese carpenters or artisans, they have a high quality.
Even in multifamily?
Yeah, even now.
Even
But,
concrete?
Yeah, it's but getting worse.
Yes, actually, there was one, what's it called,
But still better, much better.
Aneha. There was a horrible case of a large construction company, a large builder building apartments and things with very poor quality control, actually having to condemn multi-story luxury apartment building because of very, very shoddy quality control in the building. And that was widespread in that company and sort of rippled outward. Apparently, after the bubble collapsed in the early 90s, a lot of people started to cut corners. That said, the quality is very, very high. It's sort of a given that the worst carpenter in Japan can go to America and be the best carpenter. It's really very, very high, and it's wonderful to work with people who really take care like that.
Thank you so much. Could we give a round of applause? Asby Brown, Tomoyuki Yatsumi, Rosanne Haggerty, and Abbey Hamlin. Thank you.